I suggest this time you listen, because nobody wants another war or strike in Syria or anywhere else. Bring our brothers and sisters home. I am truly disgusted that you people are my leaders.
Welcome to the Rage Against the Regime podcast, where the status quo gets taken to task. Call in or text your comments to 256-344-RATR. That's 256-344-7287.
Hey everybody, welcome to Rage Against the Regime podcast, and with me, your host, Bobby, who's the man, and we have Tyler on with us today.
Hey everyone.
I just wanted to, let you guys know, we did an interview last night with a person that is very, very knowledgeable in all aspects, pretty much politically. His name is Chi Townson, and he has a Facebook page and everything. And you'll hear all about everything that we talked about and everything. But what a really and he's the type of person, he doesn't just run off of whatever somebody says just because somebody says something about something. He's the type of person that he goes into it in depth and he investigates it and looks completely into the whole package of everything. So, I mean, it's really going to be a real nice interview, and I think you guys will enjoy it.
Great.
So,
what subjects did you guys cover in the interview?
Mainly we were talking about Operation American Spring, which is this weekend. It's the March on Washington. All the patriots are going to go to Washington and march on the Capitol, and they're trying to push for Obama to be impeached, and so on and so forth.
Sounds like it's going to be a huge demonstration.
Well, the numbers, I have no idea what the numbers are going to be, but it's going to be kind of intriguing to find out, what kind of support we're going to get.
We'll have to wait and find out, I guess.
Well, the one thing that him and I talked about, and everybody will hear it in the interview, one of the main things that we talked about is, what's everybody's agenda? Because there's going to be different people going there with different agendas. Everybody should probably want the same thing. Everybody should have the same agenda in the long run, but him and I both agree, we don't think that's what the case is going to be.
It's going to be just like one of those Occupy things. It's going to be just a big mess, you think? Possibly?
Well, it could be that, but I think another thing that it could be is people, when you go to do a demonstration like they're going to do, in pushing for what they're pushing for, you're not going to want to bring weapons. You're not going to want to go there with violence, because that's not the answer to this. Right.
Absolutely not.
So, well, him and I both agree that we think that there may be some people that may want to do that, and not saying that they're patriots, they might be plants. The government could have planted those people there to have them act violently, so the media that's going to cover it can point and say, look, these people are being violent when this was supposed to be a peaceful demonstration.
Oh, jeez. Hopefully it doesn't go south like that.
Well, you never know, You never know, but I hope everybody enjoys the interview, and we're going to go to that interview now.
Rage Against the Regime.
Today, I am bringing on a special guest, somebody that could give us a whole lot of insights from a different spectrum, not so much from the other side of the tracks per se. A lot of people put out information that they get from other sources, and it's kind of like they take information from one person and pass it on and whatever. They don't really do any investigating. They don't, do their homework per se on it. I think I got somebody that is a little bit different today. The person that I'm bringing on today is Chi Townson. He has a BA in political science, speech communications, a master's degree in higher education. He is also an administrator of Truth If You Dare and Truth If You Care sites on Facebook. And he also writes, he's an editor for a blog site for Inner Alchemy. And he's just a wealth of knowledge. So let me quit talking about him and let him talk about himself. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Bobby.
Good. Welcome aboard.
Great to be here.
I actually brought you on today because I wanted to talk about this weekend. I wanted to talk about Operation American Spring, and I wanted to get a little bit of insight from you, not being the type of person that's jumping on the bandwagon like all these other people, being somebody that has knowledge and actually looks into things and does the background on it before you run with it. What do you think about this for this weekend?
Well, it's a big question. I appreciate that. Let me first start off by saying I didn't know a whole lot about this particular endeavor, but I did look into it a bit today and gleaned enough about it to get the point of it, to get what it's to get its goal. It seems to have a stated goal, a set of stated goals, which, unlike Occupy Wall Street, it seems to be a bigger difference. And that's really what we're really going to have to look at. We want to look at Occupy Wall Street as sort of a precursor, a starting model for what may transpire in Washington, D.C. Now, I don't know what kind of successful turnout this thing's going to have. It sounds like they want to do this for the long haul, so the idea of getting there right there on the 16th, might be difficult for some, but is it over time? Will it build? And what kind of media attention is it going to get, if any? There's a lot of little things that kind of got to be determined that would really give us more insight to just how effective this protest is going to be. And once we see that, I think that we'll get a clearer idea of what kind of response there's going to be. The fact that I haven't even heard that much about it up until now, with very little media attention it's got, already doesn't bode well for the effort. But such is the case for any entity at any level that tries to challenge the status quo of our country as we have it right now. So
all the things. Oh, I'm sorry. I heard a delay. I thought you stopped speaking.
Go ahead.
From all the things that I've been seeing and hearing about this, a lot of patriots seem like they're going, that they were all going to be doing this march on Washington and partaking. But I know that, there's been a lot of rumors about a lot of different things going on, and I think a lot of people are probably going to back off on it. I don't think that they're really going to have the numbers that, that they hope for. What do you think?
I'd say that's a pretty reasonable speculation on your part, Bobby. Let's look at it two ways. Okay, the first way is let's look at it as just a straight legitimate effort on the organizers, that Colonel gentleman, and just looking at it, I think Colonel Riley was his name, looking at it just as a purely honest approach to a very dishonest system. Have those that are concerned with what's going to play out. There's one thing to be out in front of, Wall Street in a tent getting pepper sprayed. A very different thing to be on the White House lawn or, in the presence of the Capitol building and of all the politicians. It sends a different kind of message, and it might be something media might not be able to ignore. But the idea that there's going to be infiltrators and this event is kind of skewer the attendance. And from what I understand, there's entire government departments devoted to just, sending out what's known as controlled opposition messages. All this stuff of fear and hatred to kind of scare people into questioning everything they do. So at that level, I mean, I would say if you had planned to come and all of a sudden you're getting second thoughts because of something you heard or something that might be, something else, well, so what? Don't let that deter you. Stick to the original plan until you're just giving them what they want. Now, if we look at it, model, right, the one where we have, this whole idea is kind of put together to kind of fool people. All right, well, to what end? I don't think we're at a point right now, at least not yet, where they're looking to gather a bunch of patriots in an area and nuke them or arrest them or pepper spray them all just for the sake of that. So, I don't know what would really be gained by them trying to nefariously plan this as an intention. But that said, that still could be the case. Maybe that's what our government is waiting for, is to get that spark of revolution so that they have an excuse to come in with the police state that, that has been used as a fear campaign for quite some time now. Alone, I'm aware of the big thing, this 800 empty concentration camps built brand new, gracing our countryside, fully operational, and can house thousands, if not millions. What are they there for? Who are they there for? It seems like are they there just to scare us and to keep us in the submission with the thought that if we challenge the government and start a revolution, we're going to end up there because they have more guns and everything? I don't know, but I do know that there's a lot more of us than there are of them, and we're getting to a point where we're running out of options. To be clear, I do not think the electoral process is an option for us. So that's my opinion on the two possibilities what could come of this. So if you take those two, opposing views, you have to kind of decide. The one doesn't make sense unless revolution is intended to spark, and the other one, well, that makes more sense. It seems like an honest gathering that is threatening to certain people in power. So naturally, there's going to be whispers of suspect, of whispers of discontentment, whispers of ulterior motives, and if that keeps just a few away or keeps 100 away, then that's that much more power in the hands of the people that we don't want to have that.
Right. Well, yeah. I know one thing. I know that, when I first heard about it and I started doing a little bit of reading about it and research and stuff, I said, this could really be a good thing on one spectrum, but on the other one, what if people that really just don't care and they have their own agenda go there and, they start I guess you could say start a riot per se, and, all they're looking for is bloodshed and stuff like that. I think it can become a very, very ugly scene very quickly.
Yeah, very, very volatile. I agree, and the idea of multiple agendas is exactly one of the things that might have kind of doomed Operation Occupy. Back and look at some of the footage and some of the articles from locations. You'll see that a lot of people didn't really understand. They weren't all in agreement who the enemy was, so to speak, and they weren't all in agreement on what the solution was. They were just there to kind of be present and kind of do what they felt was their patriotic duty, but there was no genuine organization to it, no set goals in a way that seems to be the case here. I mean, I went onto the site and I read there was a very clear set of goals, very clear, agenda to this. So the idea that others are going to be there, I can say almost certainly, definitely there's going to be that there. And it'll be probably, like I said, that controlled opposition. Those types out there that will they live these terrorist events on American soil, if not all of them, government, and using actors, the same actors. A website called WellAware1.com. WellAware spelled out and then the number 1.com. His work is pretty extensive over last several years. Obviously, I don't think all his work is accurate, but, the idea is to kind of look at everything and then you detect the patterns. So you discern what jumps out and is a recurring theme, or, and that's really how you start discerning truth for yourself as a researcher. You got to kind of just look at everything and relook at it, and then as new information comes to light, stuff starts connecting, and that's what happens. So I would bet that there's definitely going to be the agitators that really aren't part of the march itself. They're more part of the opposition that the government either hires or sends in to agitate the situation. Get the pepper sprayers out there. Get people scared. Fear is a great tool. And the other thing is that we got to remember: is it apathy that our American people have, or is it because the programs that have been in place for so many decades, including fluoridating our water supply, which is something we learned from Hitler? Fluoride is very bad for the human being, and it's not even really good for the teeth. As far as the studies I've looked, consider who sponsors these studies and what they have to gain or lose by certain results. So, when it comes to FDA and all that, well, they have an agenda. They're controlled by the 1%. I don't trust the FDA. I more would trust the scientist down the street that has his own little lab and does the tests himself, that just wants to know truth. He doesn't necessarily have the agenda. He just wants to know truth. But from what I can tell, what I understand is that, stuff like fluoridating the water, keeping us mesmerized with television, video games, drugs, especially the pharmaceutical type, where, they're just diagnosing every single, out of mainstream behavior, like thinking outside the box. Well, all of a sudden that's being deemed, criminalistic thinking. And you need to be drugged or committed or both. But either way, it's this combination of a lot of different fronts that is affronting us, each and every one of us. And so, people don't want to know the truth. People, as long as people have their lives in a neat little box and they get their 3 square meals a day and get to watch their TV and get their sex, drugs, and rock and roll on, well, they don't need to be bothered with the real issues that will ultimately affect their children, their children's children, and generations to come. And that is a very, very sad state of affairs as far as we go.
Well, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, look at some of the homeless people nowadays. There's been reports all over the internet, which, you know, I mean, you take it good with the bad and whatever. I'm talking about on Patriot sites and so on and so forth, that supposedly they're taking homeless people and moving them to FEMA camps. Now, I don't know if it's true. I mean, they take video and stuff like that and show FEMA camps all the time, but that to me would make sense.
Well, it's part of, you know, that's the thing. They're at the very bottom of the human food chain, right down there with, you know, mental disability. Basically, anyone that doesn't vote on a regular basis or contribute to the status quo in some way is considered a useless eater. It's just that simple. We basically have a bunch of undesirables, including you and myself. It's just people that, you know, that if we're sitting here in this conversation right now in this interview, that means we must not be for the status quo, which obviously we're not. So we're looking to affect change, and that starts at the small grassroots levels, just like we're doing. But yeah, you know, a lot of that, if you do see that, whether it's in a picture or what's really happening for real, it has a profound effect on the human psyche. I mean, you're seeing human beings that are supposed to be protected by our Constitution being essentially committed into a concentration camp beyond their control. And that is not what our Bill of Rights is about. So this is a very scary thing. And again, unless it happens to the person's friends or family, it's just easier for them to look away. They just don't care. It's not that they don't want to care. Sometimes they're just physically incapable of it, again, due to this affront of our senses at many different levels. I also want to add, to get back to the part about, you know, the idea of just electing somebody to make change. Because a lot of what I understand this goal of the American spring is to be about is to impeach Obama, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican, but to think that this is about Obama is being short-sighted. If that is indeed what the organizers of this endeavor are banking on. Obama, Bush, it doesn't really matter. They're two sides of the same coin. The idea that Republicans and Democrats have different agendas, well, only to the point of what's created in theater and our media. Okay, but ultimately the true agenda remains the same. That's why nothing's really changed from Bush to Obama regarding our foreign policy and our warmongering machine. And moreover, to think that Obama's in charge of all this, well, that's just again being really short-sighted, because I can assure you he is a puppet, and there are someone else pulling the strings, whether it be big corporations and or the central bank and or the Vatican and or what do you call it? The Illuminati. That's a big one. A lot of people say that. I would say all these entities have different levels of control, and they're all different levels of people that I would say our president answers to. And to them, it doesn't really matter who makes our laws. To Rothschild, he doesn't care who makes our laws. Just give him control of the money, and he controls everything. And that's where we're at. We have a world controlled by those who control the money. So you wanna take the paper trail? Who really controls this country? You follow the money. And all that money goes to the central bank, who at the top of that pyramid is Rothschild. He's been around and doing it since Hitler and World War II. So now let's take another step back and look at, all right, so what would it take? So will we elect somebody else? I might like to put in someone like Ron Paul from the Libertarian Party. Anybody that's a true patriot would probably embrace a lot of the libertarian principles that seem to take the best of both Republican and Democratic ideals while rejecting the negative aspects or the government favoring aspects of the two parties. They're for keeping your guns, and they're for choosing what kind of health care you should have. Both of these are counter to Republican and Democrat ideologies, at least as they seem to have come to be now. But let's play it out. So say all of a sudden there's this just giant, movement toward putting in Ron Paul, and we actually get him elected legally through the electoral college process. Well, I've seen on record of him saying that he knows that he would probably be assassinated because he does not serve who truly runs this country. We saw that happen with Lincoln, with Kennedy, and maybe with a few others. To be clear, both those presidents were against the central bank. I know that Lincoln predated the central bank as we know it in 1913, but there was a version of it prior to 1913 that most people aren't aware of. So from what I can tell, Lincoln and was kind of in the same boat as Kennedy as far as trying to make some changes for the good of our country as a whole. But again, there's just so many other powers that that have a lot at stake in their minds. So, but all right. So say we do that, or say we get all right. So we already know what would happen with a Ron Paul. Okay. Now let's look at your average politician. So you get a good one coming up from your state that gets into the House of Representatives into Congress. Well, they have ways of making him play ball. Say they throw some big, inaugural party for him, and he gets put in a compromising position. Say someone drugs his drink. Say if he's not drinking alcohol, just water or soda, someone drops a drug in it, puts him in a compromising position, takes pictures, and then says, okay, either you play ball or we'll ruin your career. And it would make sense. The formulas seem to remain the same. False flag operations, changing honest politicians into corruptness through lobbying, through money, whatever it takes. Everyone has their price, it seems like. The more you're into the system, the more susceptible you become.
Sure. Well, I'm a firm believer. A lot of people think that I'm crazy, but I'm a firm believer that I don't think one vote counts for anything. I think that they know who the next president's going to be already, and I think they're already prepping that person. And I think that the votes are just deployed to make the people think that they have a voice. Okay. It's something that I just actually started thinking just recently, by a lot of things that have been going on in our country. Now, am I 100% for sure? No. But, how do I know that I'm not right? Prove me wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely know what you mean, and honestly, I probably couldn't agree more. One of my favorite latest memes, meme has become a common term now if you're on Facebook. They basically put some kind of a catchy quote in a box, and then they pass it around, you share it around, and they call it a meme. Whatever. But one of my favorite latest memes was that if voting made a difference, it would be illegal. And that's a pretty profound statement when you really look at it, and I would say it's probably fairly true. Let's face it. The media does a lot to sway the opinion of voters. How the media shapes any particular candidate in any particular election goes a long way into into how people vote. Now, we've basically been a two-party system for a very long time now. And, you know, one of the oldest war strategies known to man is divide and conquer. So our government's done a really good job of keeping us divided as a nation based on, you know, ideological differences. You know, why we sit here and argue over gays in the military and abortion rights, they continue to gut our Constitution, create false flag, you know, terrorist attacks on American soil, mostly with the goal of taking our guns away, you know, justifying taking our guns away, which is what Hitler did prior to him taking over. So that should be another thing that scares everybody. But, you know, it's this idea we only have two choices. And we always divide, everyone's divided up on liberal and conservative. Yeah, there's some breakaway like the Tea Party, which is just ultra-conservative. I don't think that's a positive solution. You know, or you know, whatever other subgroups under the Democrats and Republicans exist. But ultimately, it's the same thing. We get two choices from the same coin, two sides of the same coin. And does anything really change? The only difference is who's in power, the Democrats, Republican, just means who's getting more of the kickbacks from the lobbyists and the big-time corporations that are paying for everything. Again, the agenda remains the same. You know, with a conservative Supreme Court, we never would have thought some of these laws that have recently been passed or determined on would have come from this type of Supreme Court makeup. Yet here we are. And you've got to say that someone's controlling them. It's all been infiltrated. It's all been bought and paid for. And so why vote at all? I mean, the big thing was you consider if you're educated, you're more likely to vote. Yeah, that's true. That's just because that just means that, oh, you're reading more, you know, compulsory school books that tells you how important your vote is. When an own self-education done online by just learning how to surf the net, voting actually makes no difference at all. And even when it does, they have ways to correct it, as seen by the hanging Chad incident when, you know, Bush was reelected back in 04, 05, I believe it was. So I can't disagree with you more on this idea of voting. So, and other countries think that that's America's solution. That's because they don't understand just how ensconced the corruption is. And make no mistake, any organization that deals in money, be it charity, church, school, anything, government, corporation, any organization that's large enough, I'm not talking about laissez-faire capitalism where you have small businesses. No, that's a business owner. He's not going to cheat himself. But anytime you have major entities, including charitable organizations, you have corruption. It's just the nature of man and money. No exception. Not one religious exception to it, not one charitable exception to it, and definitely not one government exception to it. So you got to always, you know, people have to keep that in mind when they're assessing our options on how we can promote change. And I'd say, you know, the American Spring, you know, could potentially do a lot more to promote change than our next election will. Because I agree with you that not only do I feel that all our presidents have been determined way ahead of time, but you can look at it. A good story, I don't know if it's absolutely true, but it was reported in such a way, and I saw from multiple mainstream media outlets. Some little girl was doing a genealogy research on the president and found that Obama is actually related, you know, has DNA tied to, royalty in Europe, specifically the Queen of England. And so she ended up doing all the presidents, and that every single president we've ever had all has genes, background ties to the Queen of England. All of them except for Martin Van Buren. So why not him, I don't know, but I never really looked that hard at it. But yeah, so Obama, Bush, Clinton, they're all the same family. It's all the same boat. Again, it's just two different sides of the same coin. A little bit of different ideology. It just means who's going to get more of the kickbacks, more of the pork, the slush fund, all that stuff. Who's going to get more of it? So the Republicans, who have been essentially losing ground because their ideologies are becoming more and more archaic, so they're vehemently attacking. Right now, Benghazi's all the rage. Do you know how many Benghazis there were during Bush's reign? It's not even close. It's such a joke. But yet they make this big, huge focus on it during Obama's thing. I'm not defending Obama, but you got to keep things in a greater perspective here. And I'm not so sure Benghazi wasn't a purposeful event anyways. Our wonderful CIA around the world has contributed much to the deterioration of many governments, many democratically elected governments, including what's going on right now in Ukraine. So believe it or not, in Ukraine, I hate to say this, but Putin's probably the good guy and we're the bad guys. We're the Nazis.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and then about the Nazis too, and I'm not sure what our listeners are aware of, but this is something that's mainstream media. Anybody can look up. It's pretty easy to check it out. When the Nazis were defeated in World War II, a lot of their leaders, their military leaders and scientists, were brought into America. Now, the history books might argue, it was so that the Russians wouldn't get them, because that was certain. The operation was called Operation Paperclip, and the Vatican played a central role in it. And basically, we took all these war criminals in and put them in high places, in our NASA, in our government, especially in the military think tanks. And they, just because the Nazis lost, and their plan was pretty effective to a point. If the United States would have chosen the other side, where would we be today? So again, look up Operation Paperclip. Look at what our government's purported, 40, 50, 60 years ago, and know that it doesn't even begin to start there. We have to look all the way back to the banksters of Babylonia to really start seeing where this game, this grand scheme against the American people, against the people of Earth, have started. It goes back a long way, and it's just a really scary thing. And the Vatican, are they corrupt? Are they so bad? Another example that anybody can look up really quick, there's a telescope in Arizona that's used to monitor the space skies. It's owned by the Vatican and University of Arizona. Again, look this up. Don't take my word for it. It's got some really long set of word terminology, but it makes an acronym out of it. It's the Vatican, calling something that it's part of Lucifer. I have an answer for that, but that's not for this conversation. The idea to this is to get our listeners to go look this stuff up and to get them to start thinking about just how deep these conspiracies go. And also know that when the media or a government official or anybody says the word conspiracy theorist, it's a pretty effective term. It immediately makes people think of, the tinfoil hats, crazies and stuff. And that's unfortunate, because in my research, I would say out of all these different conspiracy theories out there, I'd say overwhelming majority of them are way closer to the truth than our government, our business world, and our media would ever have us believe.
Yeah. I know, I was reading something. Actually, I was just reading something right now. Some of the same corporations funded both the Republican and the Democratic parties. Did you know that?
Yes, I did. And matter of fact, they just altered a law, a campaigning law, that's just driving me nuts. But it's basically giving entities such as corporations an unlimited amount of candidates that they can back on either side of the aisle. Before it used to be limited. Now it's unlimited. Now the amount of money you can give each one is still limited, but the amount of different ones, in other words, they can rig every election from now on till this law has been repealed, till major change has been implemented. They basically own it all now. That was basically the last straw, the last hurdle in countering our electoral process. And now they basically own every candidate through campaign contribution because, again, they've bought our court system. And it started when they started making corporations not liable for the damage they do to people, and also becoming being recognized as an individual person, which gives them most freedoms and abilities. I mean, we used to have something in this country called antitrust laws, where corporations couldn't get so big. And what this really speaks to is our economic model. It's capitalism. And much as I hate to say it, I'm a patriot, guys, but as much as I hate to say this, Marx was right. Capitalism isn't working. Not at the way we've implemented it. The idea of it was supposed to be laissez-faire capitalism, where we have small businesses. But now we have nothing but conglomerates, mighty, mighty corporations, and that have basically turned the United States into one big corporation. We don't have a president. We have a CEO. Okay? We have managers, not congressmen that represent us. They're managers that represent the corporation, that they want to see their own interests always covered. I get such a kick out of, the effectiveness of some of these media campaigns where, we should drug test the people that are on welfare. Really? Have you really looked into the bigger picture of this? The reason why they're on welfare is part of the plan. Because believe me, there's enough of everything to go around where nobody ever has to be on welfare. No one in the world ever has to starve. But that's all by design. Okay? Aren't we giving our politicians welfare? And last I checked, if you look at the police blotter on any of these politicians, you'll see nothing but DUIs and that they beat and get out of, and arrests for this, and domestics, and basically being an NFL team, and all the problems that go with entitlement in life. Why aren't they being drug tested? Because basically they're getting money from us in a handout form. It's this idea. Fox News is really great about telling, it's basically rich people paying rich people to tell the middle class to blame the poor. And that's Fox News in a nutshell, okay? And that's not who's at fault here. A very small amount of our tax dollars goes to funding, welfare programs. It's not even a fraction of what goes to the military. And that's what we know of. There's the whole black military and black operations where tons of money has to go into it. Well, all this black military operations going on. Well, where's the funding coming from that? Well, it's coming from us, but we just don't know it because that's not part of the shared budget that everybody sees. But what we do see is that the majority of our tax dollars goes to paying the interest rate on the federal debt. And who holds that note? Oh, yeah, the central bank. And who owns our country? Oh, yeah, the central bank. So, I really want people to be wary of the idea of blaming poor people, blaming immigrants, blaming Chirac. Okay, everything is put in by design. People are poor and people are needy by design. Okay, it doesn't have to be that way. Our world is so much bountiful that everyone could be be satisfied and happy. But that's not enough for those at the top, or those in power. They want it all for themselves, and they want us all gone. You look no further than the agenda that's stated, thing that you can look up. They actually exist. They stand right there. And you just look at the 10 Commandments. It's in 8 different languages on those guide stones, and you'll see what the agenda is really about. And it ain't about us.
Well, you brought up one thing about the debt, and what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of the debt that's here in the United States is being bought up by the Chinese. Now, you were saying a minute ago, people want to collect on their debts and, protect their debts and everything else. So what does that say about our country? I mean, if the Chinese own a lot of the debt that's here, don't you think they're going to want to come collect?
Well, that's.
I know I would.
Yeah. Well, that's funny you say that. Well, of course, that's where you really see one of the great cruxes of fear. Is this idea? Will the communist China attack the United States when we're weakened with all the wars we're fighting in Europe and in Asia, or not Asia, in Africa? I would say that China is not going to cut its own throat. China right now itself is going through like an industrial revolution. That's why there's so much smog and pollution there. They're just like kids in candy store right now. I mean, yeah, they have greater technology, like the tech age and everything, but the country as a whole, the majority, they're still just kind of coming out of their own, the other revolution I was just speaking of. I can't remember the name. Industrial Revolution. So what they got really good at is making anything and everything in those ridiculous sweatshops that they allow. They're terrible with human rights, but these shops that all our business owners have sold to overseas and outsourced all our jobs here, so that these kids and women and stuff can work these ridiculous hours under ridiculous conditions to make us all this little crap, below standard materials, often poisonous material, including lead-based paint, that can poison us, and we just buy it. Because what I learned in one of my degree programs by one professor who's from Asia, he said, well, Americans will buy anything. Look at us. We were buying pet rocks in the 70s and 80s. A rock that was painted. Nothing. We could all make it ourselves, but it was in a store and it had paint on it. We got to go buy that. In other words, we will buy anything. And so we're a huge, source of income for China. And you're right. The debt part too is there. So why are they going to attack us? That doesn't behoove them. No, we're their bread and butter. We're what's feeding them. So I don't think that ultimately our aggressor will come from them. I don't think there is. We're the aggressor. Make no mistake. We're the Nazis. We're the Hitler of the world right now. We've been for a long time, and I know that's hard for many of our maybe for our listeners to hear. But your first step is everything you've ever learned in compulsory education is probably wrong, or at the very least, not the full truth, including where we really came from and where this world's really been from. So, but yeah, I this whole idea about China and stuff, I agree they have a lot of our debt, but I think they got us right where they want us, and I don't think they.
They said that the one.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, they say that the White House is now trying to go by what China's doing with their internet there, that they want the United States to follow by that, because I guess, in China they can only go on certain websites for a certain amount of time and so on and so forth, and it's not the internet, it's the intranet. So it's a big difference. And, I don't see any Americans allowing anything like that to happen, because if you ever notice, everybody's attached to the hip with their telephone, their computers, their laptops, whatever the case may be. And if they get that privilege, we'll say, taken away, of not being able to go onto the internet and not the intranet, it's going to be, it's going to be a big difference.
Yeah, and just so happens that law has already been passed. There was recent legislation within the last month or two, I believe, that granted power to certain internet providers, certain website providers, to kind of become the gatekeeper to what we're allowed to see. So that's actually already in process. And to be clear, the difference between the internet and intranet is a matter of level of connection. Ideally, with the internet, you're supposed to be connected to everywhere, anywhere in the world. With the intranet, that's basically an in-house type of communication system. So in China's case, I would imagine, they don't have access to the World Wide Web. They have access to the China Wide Web, or maybe even smaller, maybe the Shanghai Wide Web, or maybe just the building you live in Wide Web. So they greatly limited the access of what they can look up, and that's part of the nature of their political system, which is called a communism, but in actuality it's closer to a socialist type of government with a dictator. But communism never really achieved in a genuine level, an authentic level at the government level. It's just a term that's kind of thrown at other types of regimes, because in theory, communism is considered the ultimate form of government. In theory, as Homer Simpson once said. But I'd say that we've already got that. I mean, even on Facebook, I've seen certain pictures, certain articles taken down. They're controlling that. It's Facebook. Well, who's telling Facebook to do that? Well, probably the government with certain interests. They're talking about, in America, they just want to make money off everybody. We're little mini cash machines to the people in power. And, so we're not human beings, we're consumers. So they just look at the internet as the next great, the great front to start it, getting us. I mean, they've already done it, mind raping us with all these advertisements. We can't even look at a site. I pay the company to use it. Yet here I am looking at all this commercial popping up on me. I don't want to see that. I paid for this event. I didn't pay for those commercials. Ideally, you have commercials on these internet spaces to pay for the internet space, and we get it for free. Well, if I just paid for the damn service, why the heck am I still looking at commercials? There's no limit to it. We're nothing but consumers. And so now they're looking at it as something that they can make money off of by limiting the speed, the content, the availability, and then you want to get more from it? Well, good. Well, you got to pay for it now, because guess what? The government just made a law saying they can do that, and that's kind of where we're at now. We haven't seen it at a wide scale use yet, but I do going on. And, go ahead.
You know what? We're actually we're going to take a commercial break really quick, and we will get right back.
Rage Against the Regime. Call in or text your comments to 256-344-RATR. That's 256-344-7287.
welcome back to Rage Against the Regime, and thanks for holding on, Chi.
Oh, no problem.
And we were talking about the the YouTube pages of the Patriots that have been posting videos and their pages being taken down. And I know that you might be able to give us a little bit of insight about that.
I'll try. I mean, first and foremost, when you look at something like that, you really don't know who's on the other side. So, I mean, some of these patriots that are losing their sites could go that whole legal route and, try and take it to court and argue freedom of speech. But I have a feeling most don't have the kind of, funding it would take, the type of lawyers it would take to kind of pursue that kind of endeavor and probably realize it might be fruitless. It's very hard to go up against the government. Without a name or a face on the other side of who's taking these down, it just presents so many great challenges. So what do? You just keep putting it back up. You change the names. You change the content. History is littered with people that, would face persecution if their thoughts were made public. I'd say a great example would be Nostradamus. He was in the predicting business, and he accurately predicted a lot of things, even in his own time. But his quatrains are put in such a way that are very confusing. And if they were put in plain speak at the time, he likely would have been executed. So he had to hide his predictions in a melee of words that, can take any scholar a long time to figure out if they didn't already have some kind of background information on it. So that's kind of where the challenge is. How can we get our information past the gatekeepers, the guards that watch? And then the other thing you got to look at that's no small animal is the fact that when President Bush declared a state of emergency and also declared war on terror, which is a war on an emotion, by the way, folks, a war on an emotion. Right up there with the war on drugs and the war on women and the war on poor people and it's the war on everything, huh? This makes me laugh. One of my favorite memes is, fighting for peace is like fucking or screwing for virginity. Sorry, pardon my French there. At any rate,
no, it's R-rated. It's R-rated. You can let it fly.
Okay. Well, it's like fucking for virginity. It's just nothing could be more senseless. At any rate, while we are in these states and it's never been rescinded, we are still technically in a war on terror, and we are still in a state of emergency because that has not been rescinded. The president enjoys basically unlimited, unchecked power, and it frustrates Republicans. It frustrates us all. But it's what he's hiding behind, and it's the excuse that they give to continue to gut our Constitution, and this threat. We're the threat. We're the problem, and this goes back a long way. I mean, there's a lot of mainstream documentation to show that, that Roosevelt was aware that the Japanese were coming to bomb Pearl Harbor. Do we really think a military base in Hawaii would just be asleep at 4, 5, 6 a.m. and not know that an attack is coming? No, they were told to stand down the day before, so that this attack came in, so that Roosevelt had a reason to get the American public behind him into the war. Because prior to that, America was very much against us going into the war, regardless of Hitler's atrocities. We were still kind of recovering from World War I. It was that whole return to normalcy thing and stay out of war. And so he needed to convince the American public to get us into the war. So he allowed the Japanese to bomb Pearl Harbor. This is not deep research, folks. This is something you could pretty much readily look up and confirm for yourselves. So when you're basically dealing with psychopaths that run our country, and I'm not saying Roosevelt was a psychopath, but I still have to question, what the heck was he thinking? Yeah, it might be the Great War and we, took down Hitler, but what, only to take all his leaders and scientists and put them in our government? And now we're doing what they did? Only this time, we're on the side of Israel and the Jews? I don't know. I have a lot of problems with that. So at any rate, why are things happening the way they are? Why are patriots being, silenced on a regular basis? Well, because they can be. Because the government's using and exercising every option it can to combat those that challenge its authority. And, we just have to remain diligent and keep fighting the good fight. And to be clear, though, I do not advocate, confrontation. However, if things ever get to a point where revolution is the only, solution, then I'd have to revisit my thinking. But until then, it's my opinion that, you'd take more of a spiritual route. That'd probably be for another interview some other time, but it's really about affecting, growing and waking up and kind of changing within. Because ultimately the most peaceful activism we can do, and one of the most threatening we can do, is to turn away, is to just not use, all the big companies, not use, all the big banks. Go to your local, go to your small banks, go to your credit unions, figure out different ways to pay, get out of the system, throw your cell phone away. You want us to stop using credit cards. You want them to use, there's smart meters, there's everything everywhere. They're getting us at all fronts, chemtrails, everything. I mean, there's just so much. So what do? We got to look at ourselves and change the way we're part of the system. What do we do to contribute to the matrix, and how can we stop that? Because it's really about looking at ourselves and realizing that we're being affected by nefarious beings, essentially by psychopaths that really run this world. And they honestly believe that the end justifies the means. So if that means killing children, blowing up, the Twin Towers, warmongering around the world, using drone strikes to kill women and children, whatever it takes. Because ultimately, what they see, a la, again, the Georgia Guidestones, Agenda 21, whatever you want to look up to get it, as long as they get the world that they desire ultimately in the outcome, well, then it was all worthwhile to them. And I couldn't disagree more with that. And I think that any sane, logical, loving human being would feel the same as I do. So that's where we are now.
Well, yeah, it's a shame, that a lot of their video pages have been taken down. Well, I know a lot of them have moved to live leaks. LIVELEAKS, live leaks. So I guess they don't have as much of a strict policy, like YouTube does, and I guess they're not with the regime. So, anybody that might be looking for people that used to be on YouTube and was a patriot, look for their videos on live leaks. That's just a little bit of knowledge.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you. That's good to know.
Good. Well, I would like to thank you for joining us today, and I would also like to find out, is there any place that we can find you that, if anybody wants to find out some more information about you?
Sure. I administrate a site on a group page on Facebook. It's called Truth, all capital letters, if you dare, and dare is all in capital letters. So it's truth, if you dare. It's a play on words, that everyone had played the game Truth or Dare when you were a little kid. So it's truth if you dare. You could just, there's two different kinds. Mine's the group page. There's another one that's just like a regular page where you can like it or something. That's a friend of mine, so that's not what I'm about, though. Ideally, anybody can join. You just request to join in. I'll approve you, or one of my other administrators will approve you. I have a few. And there's a wealth of information. I mean, we've been up for about 2.5 years now. I have over 1,100 followers, but we could always use more. And it's not something where mostly it's just us, spreading information, just help make people aware of stuff. I don't get a whole lot of contentious arguments in there or anything. But I'm not against it, but I'm just saying that it's a pretty smooth group. Everyone's opinion's valued, and we welcome as many as we can to join and contribute any way they can. We really appreciate it, and thank you for your time with me today.
Well, we're definitely going to invite you back on the show, so don't try to hide from me. Don't not answer the phone when I call you. So, all right, everybody, and that is my man Chi, and we will be talking to him again real soon. So, thanks for listening, everybody, and we will catch you next time.
Rage Against the Regime.
I'm Colonel Harry Riley, U.S. Army retired, founder of Operation American Spring. I'm here today to tell you why we need to go to Washington, D.C. May the 16th. We have a lawless government at the federal level. They're ignoring we the people. They've driven a wedge between us. We must go up there in huge, massive numbers in order to get their attention. Our goal is to ask and seek the resignation of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Mitch McConnell, Harry Reid, John Boehner, Pelosi, and Eric Holder.